This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
I checked the ship's comms. Still no word from Fennec.
Since when do we wait around for intel? It's something in the blood. Everyone has it, but at varying levels. Those with a high count were believed to be more capable of wielding the Force.
You're lying.
About which part?
You tell us.
If Omega did have that potential, she'd have to be trained. Which would mean leaving you behind.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
How about we talk about Star Wars The Bad Batch? Why not? Season 3, Episode 9, The Harbinger. The Harbinger is the brand new episode. It certainly got a lot of people excited. I know, and you know, that we're going to talk all about this, and we've got two very special guests to talk about The Harbinger. First, joining me every week when we talk about Star Wars The Bad Batch, he has a very high M count, Mr. Mason Zehr. Mason, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be back again.
We have got a special guest who is no stranger to Coffee with Kenobi, Mr. Ross Hollebon. Ross, welcome back to the show.
Gentlemen, awesome to be here again, and what an episode today. So excited.
We are extremely excited to talk about this again. This. I think it's fair to say that this is one that was high on people's list when we saw the trailer. So let's get into it. Ross, give us one word to describe The Harbinger and overall thoughts on the episode.
I'll say punk. So P-U-N-K.
Mm-hmm.
Asajj just exudes punk with everything she does, and I appreciate that about her so much. Love the episode, was so excited to see her, and I felt like they expressed her well without going over the top about it.
I agree. There's a lot of character stuff here, which we'll get to. Mason, what about you? One word and overall thoughts.
My one word is patience, because Asajj and Omega had to have patience while they were doing their training, and it helped them overcome that giant sea monster.
Well done. Well, my word is refreshing. It's hard to get a payoff to something that you're anticipating. We got a lot of answers to some questions. We got a few more questions, but that's good storytelling to me. And it's refreshing that certain things happened, right? Didn't feel like they were anything but authentic. And that's refreshing. You don't always see that in Star Wars or in any mythology. So I'm going to talk about that quite a bit. When the show episode starts, I want to point out something really, really subtle. There's just a really quick moment where Crosshair and Wrecker are helping some people on Pabu, and they are like unloading a boat. And it's a quick thing where Wrecker jokes with Crosshair and kind of jabs him, like playfully punches him and says, "Look at that, you made a new friend." And Crosshair looks back and he doesn't look annoyed. He kind of raises his eyebrow and he kind of smirks, like playfully annoyed, not even really annoyed. It's such a subtle thing, but this, friends, is why this is a great series about storytelling and about character development, because it's that show don't tell. You're not spending a lot of exposition saying Crosshair has changed. There doesn't need to be any dialogue of any kind. It's just pure and simple, a look and a reaction and a continued walk where they're walking together. You're seeing a bond between the two. You're seeing a mutual understanding and respect, but you're also seeing that Crosshair legitimately is helping. He's not struggling to help. There is no conflict. He's a different person now. He's changed. He's experienced the metanoia, and I just really appreciate that in a rich episode, we get 5 seconds of character that do more in 5 seconds than a lot of series do an entire run.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to see, the person on the fishing boat, the woman, say, "Thank you, Crosshair." And just even that look just gave a little bit more like, oh, he's contributing. He's part of it again. He's assimilating back into the non-Empire life. And I think that's fun to see. And I think so many people wanted to see that.
And I would wager he wasn't even like that before the Empire. I just think he's softened. He hasn't softened his edge, but he has softened the chip on his shoulder. And I think he's got it squarely placed in the right place. But Mason, anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, he's just started to bond and grow on them as he's kept being with them.
I agree. Now, speaking of bonding, we get an opportunity to for a bond that is unique. Eventually, throughout this episode, of course, the $1 million reveal is that Asajj Ventress is here. I said this way before, and I'm going to say it again. Boy, oh boy, do I wish I didn't know Asajj Ventress was going to walk out of that cave. Can you imagine how he would have felt if that would have been, oh, this is the person, this is Asajj Ventress? Because I don't, as you know, I don't speculate, and I'm glad other people do. I can't do it because I want things like this to pay off, but the trailer gave it away, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, if this had just been out of the blue and I saw her, like I was telling a coworker today about it, and I was like, I'm glad I was sitting. If this had been brand new with her and we didn't know it was coming, I'm glad I would have been sitting down, because if I was standing up, I would have just fallen right over. But we did know it from the trailer, so it's fine. But it would have been so much more rewarding and exciting had this been a surprise.
We better give Monica a heads up the next time you watch a new Bad Batch, just to be careful.
She knows. I mean, she kind of hangs out in the other room.
She gets it.
The animated series are on.
Let's talk about Asajj Ventress, Mason. As obviously with every week, we don't have to go linear, from the beginning to the middle of the end. We can just talk about anything, because this is all about Asajj Ventress. I think there's a couple things you could talk about. You could talk about her just as a character. You could talk about her connection with Omega. You could talk about the training sequences. You can talk about the fight scene. There's a lot you could talk about. Before we do, though, Ross, you've read Dark Disciple.
Yep.
Right? Fill in members of the Coffee with Kenobi family. If you haven't read Dark Disciple and you want to read it before anything is spoiled, then you should probably pause the show and come back, because we're going to refer to a lot. But, okay, you've been warned. Ross, tell everybody what happens to Asajj Ventress in Dark Disciple.
All right, and here's your final warning before I say
right.
it. So turn it off if you do not want to know. In Dark Disciple, Asajj Ventress, we are led to believe, dies.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where, even when this trailer came out, it was just like, wait a second. And like, I'm checking out timelines again. Like, where do all these things line up? She died. But I think another amazing part about that was super subtle is that Omega found her in a cavern. And it is just like the Night Sisters on Dathomir in the cave that they would have been in to find her. So I love that she was that's how she was introduced again.
And they have said on Stars.com, there's an interview with Nikki Federman, who's the voice of Asajj Ventress, Dan Brooks conducted. And she says, they say, let's get this out of the way. We know what happened in Dark Disciple. We have not changed what happened in Dark Disciple. That's part of the story. We will find out at a later date how Asajj Ventress survived. For now, this is about what happens with her and Omega. So it still exists. Christy Golan's book, still, to me, one of my favorite books in the new canonical. It's terrific. So that's still part of it. So we're not going to find out how she survived, but that'll happen at a later date. And quite honestly, I don't care if I ever know. Like, I don't need to know everything. I'm more than fine not knowing. I lived over 30 years not knowing how Boba Fett escaped, or even if he escaped. And now that I know it, I mean, it's cool, it's satisfying, but I didn't need it to enjoy the story. So, I mean, we're going to get it, but I just feel like I need to put it out there.
Well, and I'm super excited here to know what Mason thinks of Asajj, knowing his affinity for animation and knowing how much of a fan that I am of her. So, Mason, what do you have there?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like at the end when Crosshair helps Omega onto the ship, and he also doesn't just walk inside and let Asajj walk inside. He asks, like, I'll help you up too, and she takes it, and they both smile.
That's a great catch. Why? What? We never talked about that when we watched it. Why do you think that's important?
Because we know that Asajj isn't bad. She's not like, oh, I'm going to kill you now. I think she's like Crosshair, starting to bond with them as she is with them.
Well done. Ross, you alluded to loving Asajj Ventress. What is it about Ventress that you like so much?
I think just her background is so varied, and she's had to go through so many trials and tribulations, and she always bounces back. You know, before it was like tough situation. Now she's even coming back from the dead. So she is the epitome of resilience, and kind of, you know, the fact that she is with Quinlan Voss and spends so much time with him in Dark Disciple. Both of them are kind of renegades within their own group. And I definitely love that about them.
That you mentioned, Mason, you mentioned that ending sequence when the ramp to the Marauder is down and Crosshair helps Omega up, and then he extends his hand as in his term of supplication where he has his palms up to show, I mean you no harm, I'm here to help you up. There's another reason that's super important. It reminds me kind of sort of an opposite way to look at The Force Awakens with Rey and Finn. The fact that she takes his hand and allows herself to be helped up, Ventress doesn't need any help. She, you know, the Ventress of years ago would have probably chopped off his arm. But this Ventress is showing also peace. She's also showing a bit of supplication. She's also showing a willingness to work with clones who've spent their entire lives trying to kill her. She's gone through a lot. She is forgiven. She is quite measured in her growth. So just the fact that she takes the hand, I think she and Crosshair, I know she knows, and I think Crosshair was aware too. She doesn't need it, but she's allowing the gesture because she is. It's like it's a kind, polite, measured way of saying, I accept you. You accept me. And that's really strong. She doesn't lose face, and she wouldn't lose face. You know, being a gentleman isn't a bad thing, but the fact that she allows it to happen and she participates, I'm kind of belaboring the point. But I know I've written a lot of papers about this kind of stuff, quite honestly. So when I saw, I'm like, wow, that's a moment. That's, again, the beginning of this had such strong character moments. But let's focus on the middle. Let's focus on the other parts. Let's talk about Omega's relationship with Ventress. When they first meet, Ventress holds on to Omega, not tight, but just walks with her. She lets go of Omega. Of course, her brothers are not happy about it at all. Ross, talk to me about the opening scene where Ventress first talks to not only them, but also shares what M count is.
Yeah, it's almost like when she's bringing her out, it's almost like she's a small store owner and caught her stealing a piece of bubble gum.
Like Aladdin.
You know, yeah, it's just like you're coming out here and I'm telling your parents and here's what's going to go on. So it isn't, you know, and it's the first time we're seeing Asajj again, who does have this reputation that follows her and that they look at and hear as an assassin for the Separatists, as Dooku's apprentice, as just everything that she's done. Although one time she started as under a Jedi Master, learning basically as a Padawan. So like that's where everything started for her. So again, she's gone everywhere. So if someone can relate to someone being discovered through an M count, it's going to be her. So it's brilliant to have her be the vehicle to kind of help Omega learn about the Force and what is there. And then even what she does at the end, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, a little bit later, but protecting Omega and the relationships that she has because she's been through it and knows what you have to sacrifice if you're going to follow the way of the Force on the good side and the dark side.
Well, it makes sense too, doesn't it, that it's Asajj Ventress, and I never would have thought, oh, she'd be a great person to speak with Omega. And all we've seen so far is that she is willing to at least see what is going on with Omega. But I really like the fact that at the beginning of this, we learn a lot. Mason, what do we learn about from Asajj Ventress?
We learn that Omega is a little bit force sensitive, and she says everyone has it, but it determines the volume or level that you have it. And I noticed as she was talking, and Omega started walking away, she actually said the word midi-chlorians.
That's right. And you and I said, there's the word. Everyone's saying, why aren't they saying midichlorian? There it is. But it kind of reminds me of Voldemort, Mason. You're the perfect person to talk to about this. And even when I said that, your eyes went, what? In Harry Potter, why don't they say Voldemort?
Because they think it's going to attack them, like it's going to appear right in front of them.
Yeah, fear of a name increases fear of the thing itself, I believe, is what Dumbledore says.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of got the sense that, Mason, tell me what you think. I kind of got the sense that when she says it, she only says it once. It's only said once in the episode. It's almost like, I don't want to put it out there in the universe.
Mm-hmm. She's like, just settle. And I'm not even sure if she meant to, but she was like, oh, I did say that.
I agree. And she talks about the fact that you can't go around inquiring about M count because she says it's very reckless to speak about such things. It attracts the wrong kind of attention. Pretty fascinating stuff. But we do get the answers that we've been waiting for. We get the of course, what we already knew, that everybody has it. It indicates if you are force sensitive or not. Omega says, what, you mean I'm a Jedi? There's some important stuff that happens here when she brings up the word Jedi. For one thing, there's no venom, and I wouldn't think there would be because of Dark Disciple. She falls in love with Quinlan Vos. I think it's fair to say. By the way, you can't see this, listeners, but Ross changed his name to Quinlan Vos for this recording. that's what his display name says.
You can see that now.
Yes. Mason used to be Steph Curry, but now he's back to his other self. The fact that I try to think of it this way. If you haven't read Dark Disciple, and we keep mentioning it because it's a great book, if you haven't read it, then you don't understand where she's at. And if you didn't listen to or read Jedi Lost, the Dooku book about his upbringing and him falling to the dark side of the Force, written by the amazing Kevin Scott, then you don't know what's going on with Ventress. You saw a little bit in Clone Wars that she was a bounty hunter, but she has completely changed who she is. She's very focused on stopping the Empire. She does tell us, you have no idea how dangerous the Empire is. And she knows that better than anybody, having been treated the way she was by Dooku, who wasn't in the Empire, but eventually he worked for Palpatine. So she must know about Sidious, right? Do we know much about that?
I don't know yet. I know that came up in the book as well, where she was in the room or just outside the room as Dooku was talking to Sidious through hologram.
Right.
So even because she and Quinlan were so pressed on getting to know him, saying like, okay, how can we take this out? So it is the depth that this adds to things now. It has me so excited, and no line really did it as much for me as when you're hearing Ventress say, Fennec sent me. I probably pulled my left shoulder when my arms went up in the air because I was so excited about that.
Yeah, because Fennec is one of your favorites as well, and we don't know anything about their relationship. Besides that one line, there's no count of anything. It's hard for me to imagine that Asajj Ventress hangs out a lot with Fennec Shand, because Fennec Shand, well, maybe it's not so hard to believe. I mean, they both completely are on their own sides.
Yeah, I mean, they're loners, and even Crosshair at the end saying, we don't even know what side you're on. And she's like, my own.
Yeah. I'm on my own side. So she does agree to not train. Sorry, that's silly. She doesn't, that's reckless. Forget I said that. She doesn't agree to train. And I don't know anything about what's going to happen. So no, there's no spoilers being shared here. But what I do know is that she agrees to test her. to see, and there are 3 tests, which 3 is a very sacred number. Pretty cool. We're talking about that during the week of Easter, by the way. But Mason, talk to me about the tests. Share them with us and what you noticed.
The very first one, she picked like this fruit, or I think it was, and they were on this rock, and she picked it because it was super slippery, and Omega had to focus and balance on it. And then the second one, she had to go up and retrieve a like flower from the tree at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was basically really just to get her out of the way so she could fight the Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
And then the final one was to reach out, and then that's how Asajj made all the monsters come.
Yeah, you said something pretty smart I didn't really quite thought about. But you're right. I do think that's a ploy so that they can have adult conversation, as it were. Ross, I see you smiling and nodding here. Tell me your kind of impressions of that too. Nice job, Mace, by the way.
Yeah, no, great pickup, Mason. Like that's as soon as she heard Crosshair come back with the report saying that, oh yeah, she's a separatist assassin. It's who you thought it was. She's like, oh, looks like I need to talk to the fellas for a little bit, and we're going to send you a little bit on a wild goose chase. So Omega had to go up, and thank goodness for Batcher for being so fast and able to carry her for that. But it gave time for one heck of a fight between the 4 of them that the fellas from the Bad Batch are licking their wounds after that one.
You know, but I want to talk about the fight. But before we get to the fight, I was sort of aware that was a bit of a distraction. But I also think it was an authentic test. And I don't know that Ventress knew what was going to happen because she's not clairvoyant. Just because she's strong in the Force doesn't mean you can see the future. And even that is very clouded, as we know. Even Yoda has problems with that. Excuse me. But as soon as it happened, I looked at the scenery and I thought, well, wait a minute. It just kind of hit me. Wait a minute. As long as we've known Omega, she's had a way with animals. And it's not just because she's kind. Oh, well, we always thought it was because she was kind. But you ever heard of Ezra Bridger, for example? There are some Force-sensitive individuals who are very in tune with nature to a degree that they can connect with animals. And I thought, the only way this can happen is either she suddenly develops these Jedi muscles that are enhanced, which that would be very out of place and it wouldn't work. But the only way that she could do it is with Batcher. And I think Ventress doing that. In fact, I think she even looks at Batcher. She sees the two of them have a bond. The only way that can be accomplished is with the connection of Batcher. That's obviously what happens. Test is passed. Ventress says that it's not passed. Or, well, she doesn't really address it, but she doesn't really give her a glowing recommendation. But to me, I was like, okay, now we've got something here. So let's talk about the fight, and then I want to go back to this whole notion of what's going on with Omega. Mason, what'd you love about the fight?
Probably my favorite part about the fight is the very beginning when she makes all of the guns go like near the water on the rocks and says, no cheating.
Yeah, and then she uses the Force, but not really. Kind of. I don't know. Ross, what'd you love about the fight?
You could see how acrobatic she was. And it was really, some of it was almost more Jedi-esque protection versus being the aggressor. So she had some aggressor in there, but that's the duality that makes her such an attractive character to me, is just she can draw from the dark side and understands it because she's been there. But especially now, it's almost like she's seen some sort of light. And later she says, that they were all pawns in the same war and we all lost. So she understands, like, yep, I got used in all of this stuff. Now I'm going to look out for me. And as she's in this fight, just kind of taking care of herself, her utter confidence and use of the Force when necessary. But even when they get the blasters back and she's just turning a shoulder and dipping to the side before lighting the yellow lightsaber, I'm just like, yep, she's cool and she has all of this under control.
Yes, yeah, I thought it was great too that she would dodge those blasters without even really trying. And this is where she's complex and interesting. She's not like ostentatious or flamboyant in her movements, She's not showing off, is what I mean. She is surviving, but she's also, it's a workout for her, honestly. And I don't think there's any conflict with her at all when it comes to the dark side. I think that she's not using lethal force. Now, she's not being a pacifist. I watched it a couple times. The second time I watched it, I purposely watched her moves. And she moves pretty quick, so that's not easy to do. I watched her moves to see if she was just deflecting their moves back at them and just being defensive. But no, she's not a Jedi. She wouldn't be purely defensive anyway. And many of the Jedi are aggressive when they need to be for survival, and that's what she does. She's the most violent towards Wrecker, and to me, that is completely because he is twice, 3 times her size, and he is physically, he's by far the most threatening to anyone because of his size and his strength and his power. So that's why she goes extra hard at him. But it's just pure grace. And Mason and I talked about this. I love that it's very kung fu. Like, this is pure karate. I don't know the form, but it's Jedi, and we don't see the Jedi fighting a lot like this. You did it in Kenobi with Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're certainly going to see it in the Acolyte to an incredible degree, but it hasn't been very, very prevalent. Usually because we use a lot of force pull and push, a lot of force, kinetic energy stuff, and of course the famous lightsabers themselves. So if anything, the control is great. Plus, there's a great moment where the Bad Batch get their armor or their weapons back, and they play kind of a triumphant raise in the crescendo of the music of the theme. Yep. But it's not very lasting because you got to show the Bad Batch is so formidable. But Asajj Ventress is, she is way out of their league, and she gives them a good fight though. I think it's a good challenge for her, but I don't think there's any danger of her losing. And I think the Bad Batch know it, but the fact that they don't give up is A, no surprise, and B, a nice reminder that, hey, not only this is still their show, sure, but it's really more like, hey, they're pretty tough too. It's great. It's great. And there's no question that Ventress would have taken care of them pretty easily, I think, if she wanted to. But this is who she is as a character. She is saying, I am not your enemy. And she does try to talk them out of it, but I don't think she does it with a lot of used car salesman pitch, because I don't think she minds the workout.
Well, and it's fun because you said, I'm not your enemy, but she starts that sentence with, I'm many things.
Yes.
And that's what she embraces it. She knows she's not hiding from it or anything. Mm-hmm. She's like, yep, I've done this. I've done this. I've done this. And lo and behold, here I am again. It's like, but I'm not your enemy.
It's fabulous. Mason, anything else you want to say about the fight?
No.
It's pretty great. Well, I think another part of this that's really cool is, for one thing, her lightsaber is yellow, which I think it was. Was it yellow in the book? I can't remember.
That I was trying to look, and shortly before this, I was like, "Oh, what was Quinlan's?" And he had green, because I was just like, "Ooh, yeah. By any chance is that Quinlan's saber?"
But it's the curve, so it's her old one for sure. But she's only got the one.
Yeah. So I will have to go back and look on that. Again, I'm not certain right now, and I don't want to make the guess.
Right. No, I hear you. And that's very responsible. One of the many reasons why people love having you on all the podcasts all over the galaxy. I love Asajj Ventress and Omega's banter. You're an odd little clone, and Omega says, thanks. So what the tests tell you. And it's purely sincere. She deflects the insult. It's no big deal to her at all. But I love how they talk to each other. Mason, what did you notice about whenever they interact with each other and they talk?
I just loved how Asajj was like, oh, this and this, but Omega was like, okay, yeah, and just focusing on her training.
Oh, you mean like just trying to ignore, like, because I think that she's good about, like, I think Ventress, tell me if this is what you're saying. Ventress gives a lot of opportunity to stop the conversation, but not to run away from it, to see if Omega will push. And Omega does. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And their final test is on the water, which, oh boy, I could talk a long time about this. Talk about the last test. Mason, what happens and why do you think it's important?
I think it's very important because, like, when they start shooting that giant animal, the Bad Batch, when they do shoot it with that ship, Asajj knows that it's not gonna help and it's only making things worse.
Mhm.
And then she says, "Stop! I have this," and Crosshair says, "It doesn't look like that from up here." And then when when the animal creature grabs hold of her and pulls her closer to like eat her, she like reaches out the hand like she was doing and trying to show Omega and like tames it and makes it put her down.
Was that your favorite moment, or which was your favorite moment from the episode?
Probably when they all fought.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Ross, what about you? What about the third test was so interesting to you?
I think it was a lot of the interactions between the two of them. I took a note that there is a lot of Luke with Yoda as Omega with Ventress here, and questioning, and I can't do this, and this is slippery, and coming up with excuses. And you don't expect Ventress to say do or do not, there is no try. But she took that approach of like, no, just do this now. Stop. She was so patient, and I did not, and that was Mason's word earlier. She was so patient with her, and I just didn't expect it. Like, that was the biggest surprise throughout the episode. But I think that's the part again where she recognizes, oh, she has no idea how much trouble. None of this group knows how much trouble she's in because of her M count. And she understands it and has kind of been through it herself.
I think it's pretty brilliant. Like I said, if you haven't read some of the books, it's incredibly brilliant to reintroduce people to Asajj Ventress who haven't seen her since the Clone Wars animated series. Because they just anytime she's on, you can tell she's different, and people waiting for her to revert back to her old tricks are sorely disappointed. I guess we are forgetting the very crucial Clone Wars arc where Dooku betrays her and tries to kill her. Have you guys shown you that one before, Mace? Those episodes?
I don't think so.
Oh, they're really good. We'll have to watch them. They're really, really good. But there's one sequence where she's on that boat, and in classic, teacher, learner, Jedi screen situations, whether it's Yoda and Luke. I almost said I tried to mix Luke and Yoda together. I came up with a brand new Jedi name. Or Rey and Luke later. There's many examples, but she can't do it, or she's holding herself back, as Ventress later shares. But Ventress steps out there, she holds her hand up, and then we get English teacher paradise. There's water, right? And it's the murky transition, but swirling around the water are these bright fish that are all green in color, very, very primordial looking, but this effervescent green, and green is a color of life and hope and rebirth. So you've got the color green and these organic fish swimming around like the very beginnings of life in water, which is change, and Ventress is controlling it all. She's more natural and in tune with herself than maybe she's ever been. Not in this moment, but just who she is as a character and who she is as a person. And I thought, wow, yet again, this is like the third or fourth time where they've hammered home something powerful about character without telling you. Like, if you didn't even think about that, it wouldn't matter. But the fact that there's so much textual richness in this is just so vibrant and compelling. And then the fact that she brings back this creature that she said, did you mean to call that? And she said, I think she says not intentionally. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that there's this wild beast, she goes down there to save Omega. She turns on her lightsaber just once to cut off a tentacle. She turns it off right away. She doesn't go at the old Ventress would have gone after the thing and murdered it.
She was just rescuing Omega. She wasn't trying to attack the creature.
That's it. And then she goes back to the top and she tames the beast. She goes up and she touches it. She makes a connection with it. She's very calm. There's no aggression in her in this or in any part of the episode. And again, just shows us what you like besides the voice, the great voice, and some of the fighting. She's just not the same person. And it's just so smart. So she has, not only is she obviously extremely force sensitive, but she's able to connect with nature. And this is not a force ability that everybody has, by the way. It's very, very specifically shown over and over again. Only a handful of Jedi have it. Actually, in the Star Wars book, they do talk about it. I do want to point that out. Full disclosure.
And you can pick up your copy on Amazon and other places where you find your favorite books.
That's right. Ding! No, seriously, it's there's plenty of examples of that. And I think it's very important.
A fun part of that. So the Varathian is the big monster.
Mm-hmm.
And we see these neon fish, jellyfish, whatever they are, swimming. But when you see the Varathian comes up, its mouth has all that neon and stuff over it. So it's like it was chasing them and feeding on them when they were being called over. So that's how it came over. Because at first I was just like, ooh, what kind of nuclear power plant monster is this with the with the mouth like that? But then seeing it and like you said, Dan, Ventress understands it, and she's not looking to have the fight. She's always looked for the fight, and now she wasn't looking for the fight. And it was there were so many relative moments to times of awakening for Ahsoka during the live action series into what we saw with Ventress today. Maybe I'm trying to make that happen in my mind, but I really felt like there were certain elements where you're talking about the water, we're talking about rebirth, we're talking about there are pieces that are tied together with two of Filoni's greatest characters that he's developed.
Yep, I agree. Another great thing about this Varathian is the fact that it's larger than life and it raises to the surface. So this could be a wonderful metaphor to what Ventress had conquered before. That's the dark side, the monster within. And she's tamed it clearly based on how she acts. And she tames this thing here fairly easily, quite honestly. This is something that could have ignited her dark side and had her go aggressive and kill this thing. But again, it was just about rescuing Omega. That she's able to tame it. And while she's doing it, the head of the monster is pulsing with green, shooting through it. To me, that's life. That's life. That's birth. That's not birth. I'm sorry. But it is growth. That vegetation, in the spring, the green comes back, right? Persephone is no longer in Hades anymore if you're into Greek mythology. So this is like life is pulsing through this creature and light. And I'm not going to say good or bad because it's a creature, it's an animal. It's not good or bad. It's eating to survive, right? And so it gracefully and blissfully swims away, much like Ventress, the way she handles herself in all of this. So it's so great. And I will say, I swear this isn't. I don't mean to do this on purpose, but on StarWars.com there's an article about a similar situation that happens in Dark Disciple with Ventress and an underwater creature that's very, very powerful. And I'm going to post it in the cafe, full disclosure. I did write it years ago, but it was one that got a lot of good traction. And I think it ties in kind of cool to this in a very fortuitous way that I, of course, had no knowledge of and just happened to work out. Again, English teacher luck is what we're going to say. At the end of this, Mason, something important happens. We find out that Ventress was lying to Omega. Why was she lying? And is this good or bad? I mean, is lying ever good? Now, remember, I'm your dad. Careful how you answer this.
I think lying is only good when you are trying to get someone, like, not hurt or something like that.
Explain that. Explain that. I think that's a very wise answer, but it doesn't surprise me. You're a pretty wise young man. Tell me why that is appropriate here.
I think because, like, Omega can get hurt anywhere in the galaxy because the Empire is looking after her, but Ventress is trying to protect her and not trying to get her killed.
Mason, I think you nailed it. Like it really becomes just Asajj has made her mark, Omega has made hers, and they've all grown through this episode.
Is there anything else we want to talk about as we wrap this thing up? I'm very, very, very impressed by the characterization of Asajj Ventress in this. It's a masterclass in character, really is. You say a lot without having to do a lot of exposition. The characters, the limited amount of dialogue that is used is very effective and powerful. And there's a lot of show, don't tell storytelling, which is some of the finest that you'll see. So we might as well just give letter grades and last minute thoughts on this thing as we're wrapping up. Mason, why don't you go first?
I'm sorry, hands down A+.
Tell us why.
Just the return, I say return, but Asajj being there, and when, like Ross said, when she says, I was sent by Fennec, it's just so good.
Agreed. Ross?
Yeah, I don't give many A+, but I'm going there as well because of the character development, because and how it started, like you brought it up, with Wrecker, Crosshair, and a citizen fishing boat from Pabu, where it's, okay, here's what we're learning here. Here's the importance of relationships, and we get to see it develop between someone who has been a nightmare to the galaxy, who is, it appears, trying to do at least not do bad things, maybe even doing good things. So seeing Asajj be able to come into that, and then a quote that I missed earlier when you asked about when the scene started, getting to know her right off the bat. She hasn't changed in her wit or her ability to take a shot at someone. So when she's talking to the Bad Batch, for rogue clones who are trying to lay low, you're failing spectacularly.
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is Asajj and she's back.
That is 100% an Asajj Ventress line. I'm giving this one an A, a very, very strong A, not an A+. Only because, well, I don't really have a reason. It's an A. It from a character perspective, it's an A+ of A+. But it's really important. I will say this: the episode in Ahsoka where Hayden Christensen is in it that you saw in theaters, Ross. I can't remember the title of that episode. Do you remember it? I can't remember.
Off the top of my head.
But everybody knows what we're talking
about. There.
Yeah. That's everyone knows what we're talking about. I think this episode is better than that as far as what it says with character. And I can explain that at another date. It's to me, I don't want to review the hype. I want to review what we have for the story. The story is sound. The story gives us a little bit of information. It's a good solid A.
Well,
the third episode is an A+.
It leaves us asking so many questions still. So like this is, Batch for breakfast. Greg and Greg, get it going, because there's lots of questions here. So
yes, there are.
Being able to see that and wondering other relationships and where we might see some more of these people again. It's so super exciting.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is... yes.
Well, it's also exciting to know, gosh, this is the 9th episode. We don't have that many left. Well, we have 6 episodes left. That's a little depressing, but it's not depressing because I know I'm going to get to talk about it each and every week with Mason. Mason, where can people find you? Are you still on a basketball court, or are you getting bored out there?
Oh, no, I'm not getting bored.
You're still happy on there. All right, Ross, what about you? What's going on with Album Cockpit Podcast and all the great things you're doing?
So I recorded and posted my first episode since August. So it took a long break, and came back and was surprised that Spotify had changed the rules on me. So can no longer use music on Spotify. So I have transitioned primarily to YouTube now, and it sets up as a playlist, which actually may work better in some ways because I talk about the music videos a lot. So now those get embedded in the playlist of each episode. And recently dropped Gish by the Smashing Pumpkins with my buddy Ian Embry. And I'm recording a Megadeth reaction album on Friday, and it's a band that I've never really listened to, and I've listened to it a lot over the past week, and it is, it takes me back to the days of wishing I had like the David Coverdale and Gene Simmons hair down my back. But it's some good headbanging thrash metal there.
And what about all your writing as well?
Yeah, well, I have all these notes here. We'll go into my recap as part of the group recap for fantatrax.com. So check that out for all things Star Wars. And I know that's a friend of Coffee with Kenobi podcast with Mark Newbold and the wonderful group out there. And I'm fortunate that I get to play in a lot of different sandboxes in this Star Wars galaxy of friends that we have.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along. Move along.